can show me how the 14th Amendment of the United States of America Constitution, I'm gonna print it out to you.
Excuse me, she just explained to you how you have jurisdiction, and nothing she said was true. I
Just
never
because
had a
you
driver's
say it's
license.
not true.
I never had a driver's license.
Okay, you don't have to find that you are in accordance, especially because you say that you operate under the Constitution. Well, the Constitution is all of it. It's not the parts we want to choose. Acts and rules need to follow. That's my rule. What do you want to do next with this?
I would like to enter default judgment.
Okay, motion denied. What do you want to do? Your options are that you can have a bench trial.
Right away, we're hearing one of the most common sovereign citizen arguments, the claim that someone can separate themselves from U.S. citizenship while still standing in a U.S. court. The problem is that courts have consistently rejected these theories for decades. Watch closely, because the judge is about to focus on something very different from what the defendant is arguing.
Calling ticket number SP 1466801. Ticket SP 1418401. Ticket SP 1411848. SP 1283888. SP 1452301. SP 1467130. Ticket SX 2454328. Ticket SP 1409982. And one of these names. So SP 1409983 and SP 1283889. Appearances for the record, starting with counsel for the people, please.
For the record, Your Honor, good morning. Dia Chico Mason, City of Detroit Law Department, 43471.
All right. And Mr. Williams, can you state your name for the record, please?
Timothy standing before the court as a state citizen, not U.S. citizen. My nationality is American, standing as the people.
Is that your full name? What's your full name?
Timothy Williams.
All right, Timothy Williams. All right, and sir, you know you have the absolute right to have an attorney. You understand that? Are you foregoing that right today?
Represent myself.
You're representing yourself. Do you understand that because some of these are misdemeanors, constitutional rights kick in, such as fines going up to $500, possible jail time up to 30 days, and that's why they advise or offer you the opportunity to have an attorney, but you're not wishing to have that attorney today. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
Okay. Make sure you keep your voice up really, really loud, okay? And today is your motion. So I'll let you start by providing what you want to start as far as your motion for why I don't have jurisdiction over these particular matters. Go ahead.
I submitted a affidavit of non-existent corporation to the Corporation Counsel, Alexa Schneider.
Okay, she's not here. You can see it. Attorney Mason. All right, but state your reasons why I don't have jurisdiction.
Well, the state of Michigan Constitution states that Article 1, Section 9, the bills of obtainers is unlawful. Section 9, slavery and voluntary servitude, and ex post facto laws. It just states that I don't need a driver's license, registration, or insurance to travel within the states. So that's
what case does it say that in, that you don't need a driver's license?
Michigan Constitution, Article 1, Section 9 and 10, Clause 3 here.
You said the Michigan Constitution.
Yeah, of 1963.
Judge, I'm sorry, breaking up. Is it possible he could come closer to that microphone that you said? It helps. The microphone helps, but
I know. So no.
Article 1, Section 9 and 10.
Now we're reaching the heart of the dispute, the famous right to travel argument. Here's what makes these cases so interesting. Almost everyone agrees there's a constitutional right to travel. The real legal question is whether that right eliminates a state's authority to regulate who can operate a motor vehicle. Do you think those are the same thing? Let me know in the comments.
Okay, so you said Article, Michigan Constitution, Article
Article 1, Section 9 and 10, Clause 3.
19.
Bills of attainder is unlawful. That's just ex post facto law.
Section 19 says, in all prosecutions for libels, the truth may be given in evidence to the jury. And if it appears to the jury that the matter charged as libelous is true and was published with good motives and for justifiable ends, the accused shall be acquitted.
Is that Article 1, Section 9 and 10?
Oh, I thought you
Clause-
said
clause-
section 19.
No.
And you see,
Section-
you're not speaking up loud enough for me to
Sorry.
hear.
Section 9 and 10, Clause 3.
9.
Apologize.
Slavery and involuntary servitude.
Being in the state of
Neither
Michigan.
state nor involuntary servitude, unless for the punishment of crime, shall be tolerated in the state. What slavery am I asking you to do right now?
The state
state.
of Michigan is trying to convert my right to a good privilege. Trying to force me into a contract.
You don't have to get a license, but if you're stopped in a car while you're driving, it's a rule of the state of Michigan that you have to have a license to drive. You know, you do not ever have to get a license, ever. But if you drive a vehicle, the Constitution affords each state and municipality the opportunity to create laws to protect people.
I get it. The statutes is to enforce law,
Correct.
and the Constitution is to uphold lawful law.
That's right.
And the citizens have a right to travel throughout the state.
You can travel on a bicycle, on your feet, on a bus. If you do not want to get a license, the license is created so that you have the opportunity to know that you understand what the rules and the traffic signals mean. So that, because this is what happens, and the court gets to interpret why certain laws are put into place. Because if incidents happen where people don't have licenses and don't have the ability for us to track that person driving, what you're gonna do is sue the state of Michigan because you're gonna say they should have had something in place.
Notice what's happening here. The prosecutor is talking about jurisdiction, residence, and state authority. The defendant is talking about citizenship status and contracts. They're essentially having two completely different conversations. That's why these hearings often go in circles for so long.
I comprehend what you're saying, but Section 10 say,
Let me look at section 2. Okay. It says no bill of attenders, ex post facto law or laws impairing the obligation of contract shall be enacted.
meaning state of Michigan cannot force contracts amongst citizens. We have a right, a constitutional right to travel out the states
No.
in an automobile.
No, it doesn't say in the automobile. Where in the Constitution does it say you have the right to travel in an automobile?
Our constitutional right is to have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
That's right.
We travel in automobiles, not
No.
vehicles.
Tell me where in the Constitution it says that you can have an automobile.
Shapiro versus Thompson.
Shapiro versus Thompson.
Shapiro versus Thompson, we have a right to travel throughout the
What?
states, jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
You do. Listen, I'm not denying you have the right to travel. You can travel in the state of Michigan and any state that I'm aware of. In order to travel and ride in your own vehicle,
Automobile.
you have to have automobile, vehicle, car, whatever it is. If you want to physically get behind the wheel and drive it, you have to have a driver's license. I'm not saying you can't travel. You can travel as much as you want on the road.
But a minute ago, you said I don't have to have a driver's license.
You don't. But if you want to get behind a vehicle and drive it yourself personally, you have to have a license. You don't have to. Listen, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But if you choose to, then certain things kick in as rights that the states and municipalities and governments have to enforce the rules as long as they've been found not unconstitutional. It's not unconstitutional. Remember, we can have stricter laws in the states. They can't violate federal laws, but they can be stricter. And each state has decided, and I'll just talk about the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan has decided in order for you to drive an automobile, a car, a vehicle, that you have to have a license.
For business, that's correct. Doing business.
This may be the biggest turning point of the hearing. The judge isn't just challenging the legal theory anymore, she's pointing out a practical contradiction. If someone truly believes the court has absolutely no authority over them, why show up and ask the court for relief in the first place? That question has appeared in countless sovereign citizen cases across the country.
Commerce.
No,
Taxi cabs, Uber.
no, because they have different type of licenses in the state of Michigan too. So they have a specific license if you want to do commerce. They're different licenses. So driver's license say there are different levels to them. So yes, for business. If it was only a business license, I would get you. You only need one for business. But on the driver's license, that's not what it says. But I'll let you continue your argument and then I'll let her have her response, Madam Prosecutor. So continue.
I'll let her.
Okay. Response.
Your Honor, I would agree with the court on that. I would also kind of reiterate that it is a privilege to drive. It is not a right to drive. It is a privilege. But the Constitution.
No, she didn't object during your statement.
Object.
So what?
She used
Based
the
on
word, she used the term drive, travel.
travel. Can you use the word travel?
Did you find the word drive?
Driving is getting into a vehicle and moving it under the power of an engine or under the power of an engine on public highways, streets, and freeways.
And the definition of travel is from point A to point B.
You know, and again,
And not driving a commerce.
excuse me, I'm not finished with my argument. I allowed you to proceed, and I expect you to give me that same courtesy. Okay, thank you. Also, there's a rational basis that the Supreme Court has articulated when it comes to the Constitution. The fact that, I'm sorry, I'm looking at him instead of the court, Your Honor. Rational basis for our rules and regulations, and that is for the security and the safety of the public and the public welfare for people. And that's why.
Hold on, no. We're not gonna play the interruption game. This is not the interruption game. Now, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to respond, but while she's talking, we're not gonna interrupt her and say under what law. Okay, go ahead, Attorney Mason.
So there's a rational basis which the Supreme Court has articulated in cases that show that they have a right to regulate certain types of activities among the people in the United States. And so a rational basis is the security and the protection of people regarding driving multi-vehicle, heavy vehicles upon its public highways, roads, freeways. And I believe that he does not have an unfettered right. You just don't have an unfettered right without any type of regulation to travel in a vehicle on the public highways, freeways, roads in the city of Detroit, the county of Wayne, the state of Michigan, and the United States of America. I also believe that this court does have jurisdiction which has been given to it through the state of Michigan, through the state constitution, which gives and creates the judicial, the legislative, and the executive branches, and through the powers of the federal constitution, which comes down and grants that power to the 36th District Court. In addition, Your Honor, based upon the citation provided to Mr. Williams, he has pretty much relegated himself to this jurisdiction when he did get his license, which starts with the letter W 452-793-785-529. He lives within the jurisdiction of this city, which the address is, if I can make that out. So he has subjected himself to the jurisdiction of this state, of this city, and this county.
Thank you. Did you have a response, sir?
Yes, I'm not a U.S. citizen, and ID she's talking about, I never had a driver's license. And the ID, the council since 2018. I am not a resident of US. I'm a USA citizen, state citizen, state of the union citizen, not a US
Okay,
citizen.
so if you're not.
And this is proof that I never had a driver's license.
Okay, so you use the Constitution in here. I read your brief. Use Constitution, the United States 13. What about 14? I said, what about the 14th Amendment? You talked about incited in yourself, the 13th Amendment about slavery, but then, so the Constitution applies to you, correct? The United States of America Constitution applies.
Correct.
Okay, so the 14th Amendment states.
Before the 14th Amendment, you had state citizens. And after the 14th Amendment, that's when they created US citizens.
Okay, so you already know it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states in which they reside. How do we deal with that?
I'm not a US citizen. I'm a state
But
citizen.
they said all persons born or naturalized. Naturalized means if you just come here.
That's not what that means. I have no contracts with the state of Michigan.
Just because you don't want to have it doesn't mean
It's
it
not about
doesn't
not wanting.
exist.
We follow the Constitution. You took
Yes,
those the Constitution, right?
Listen, it says no state, at further goes on to say, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor should any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law.
Correct.
So
With
this
the law,
is-
the
this
law
is-
of the land, which
this
is
is
supreme
So
rulings.
here's the due process of the land though. If you didn't commit these offenses, you have a trial. That's what due process is.
But I submitted a denial of corporation. This court has no jurisdiction. I have no contract with the state of Michigan whatsoever.
You don't, okay. So the fact that you say you don't have contract doesn't make that not true. But we're not talking about contracts. We are
Alright.
simply, you're not a corporation, you're a human. If these tickets were written against your corporation, that would be different. This
It
is
is written
against
against
a
the-
human being
They
that
written
I can
against,
see physically in front of me right now,
you
who's
see me, but
talking.
the paperwork don't see me. That's a council ID from 2018. That's a dead entity.
Listen, and it's a cancel ID, but they found you all while you were driving behind a vehicle. A Chrysler 2006 white vehicle at East Davidson and Mount Elliott, a Cadillac vehicle in the area of Midden and Gunston, a GMC vehicle in the area of East Jefferson and Garland Streets.
You know, and I
The
pose no threat.
Chrysler and that you just had those three vehicles, it looks like.
You know, and I pose no threat to the community.
And
I travel throughout the
I'm not
state.
saying, but you have to follow what the laws of this city are.
I was the law of the land. Supreme Court ruling, Shapiro versus Thompson.
Okay,
have the right to travel.
read to me what it says.
Because the constitutional right to free movement between states was implicated, the court applied the standard of strict scrutiny and held none of these interests were sufficient to sustain the waiver requirement. The court held that there was no evidence that the requirement would make planning a budget more predictable than gets the point. Finally, the court rejected an argument that Congress had authority. Finally, the court rejected the argument that Congress had authorized the waiver because Congress does not have power to authorize violations of equal protection clause. And the equal protection clause
And
is
what is that case referring to though?
the right to travel,
The right to travel. Was it in a vehicle?
automobile.
Automobile, was it in an
And
automobile?
further, the court reaffirmed that the right to travel under the 14th Amendment, privileges and immunities clause, and Suez versus Roe, 1999.
Right,
This is
So-
held by the Supreme Court.
so the right to travel in an automobile, that's what it was talking about? In that case, no, the first one,
How
People
else
versus
would you
Shapiro.
travel Go out of state. How else would you travel? Go out of state.
No. You
You didn't say
how else do you
exercise.
travel?
You didn't say
It's
exercise.
no.
Go out of state.
How else do you travel? Tell me. Tell me the means of transportation that we have in the United States of America. And I want you to tell me every means. We have trains.
Automobile.
We have planes. We have bicycles. We have buses. We have luxury coaches. We have the RV motor vehicles. We have tractor trailers. We have legs.
Automobile.
That we have automobiles. So, what specifically in there does it say that the right to travel only applies to automobiles?
No, not only. Of course
Okay.
Not. Of course not.
So it doesn't say you have the right to travel only if you use this means. It says you have the right. If I tell you you can't go someplace, that you can't have the right to travel, you can't leave at all, either you must be in prison or you must be on probation, and I'm having some type of authority that leads me to do that. I can't stop you at any point in time. Today, if you want to walk out and go to another state, you can. But you have to use a means that you're able to use. And once you go behind the seat of a car and vehicle and you use it to travel, because I'm not stopping you from traveling, because you can get there. It may not be by the way that you want to get there, but and it doesn't say in there that it's by the way that you want to get there. It says if I stop you, there are many means by which you can get to where you want to go. But if you take the opportunity to get behind the wheel of a vehicle, you now subject yourself to the rights and privileges of those who have.
Watch this carefully because the discussion is about to get even more technical. The defendant now argues that he's not a person under the Constitution but a living human being. Courts almost universally reject this distinction, but it's one of the most frequently repeated concepts in sovereign citizen ideology. The judge's response is about to reveal why.
A driver's license.
Under what law?
Under the law of the United States of America, passed down to the state of Michigan, passed down to the municipality, to create laws and regulations to help with the protection of society. And I told you the reason why, and I don't know exactly, I haven't read the legislative intent, but I'm imagining it was twofold: to protect society from one another and at least give us some type of skills. Now I know you have the skills, or maybe you should possess the skills to know what traffic signs are, to know what speed limit signs are, to understand what all of those things are, and probably also to help with the liability. Because if there were accidents and nobody was held liable because I don't have to have anything, well then who's in trouble? The individuals, yes. But then they're gonna say, but you let us do this, and you fixed the roads, and you created roads and paths for us to be able to travel on, or traverse on, or to drive on, or to move about on, and now it's your responsibility to govern these roads.
I have to object to it. Nothing you said is a law, like that's not
It's
constitutional.
the law, the 14th Amendment is what I'm standing on.
What about the
Anything versus-
US, the Michigan US
This
Constitution?
is the Constitution of the United States of America that I read.
Okay.
That is the 14th Amendment of the United States of America Constitution.
But you asked for laws, we in Michigan, right? Which
Which one is it? Do you want the laws of Michigan or do you want the laws of the United States of America?
it's the same thing.
Exactly.
No.
My point. Sir, Mr.
No,
Williams, you are here
Right.
today. Let me start.
No, I think,
Okay, with the
I think
argument.
both of us misinformed.
No,
I
I'm not
think both of us
misinformed. Mr. Williams, you came today because your name means something to you. And you have all these tickets and you would like to resolve them at some point in time because your name means something to you. And the fact that you have these matters out here means something to you. Because otherwise you would do what everybody else does who believes in this stuff, and they would just not show up and just be like, whatever, because it doesn't apply to me. But your name means something and you want to take care of these. You, even if you're not traveling, one of your tickets, ticket SP 1418401, count one of that ticket is open alcohol in a motor vehicle driver. Would you like to at least address that ticket?
Well, people want to see the whole bottle in the back seat. So from
And so you hear it, Mr. Williams? You can address these tickets, right? Because that's a ticket that don't have to do nothing with you driving at that point in time. That's a ticket in the state of Michigan that you're saying that the traveling, you weren't traveling at that point in time. It's just a ticket about what's going on in that vehicle that you own and you have. So how do we address? And that's my, I won't say confusion, but that's my point where I need clarity. How do we address those tickets? If you say that the rest of them, how do we address tinted windows?
It's a private automobile. There's nothing wrong with it.
What about seatbelts?
How do you see I have a seatbelt on by tinted windows?
So you come and you want to talk about the travel and the rights, so you just want to do whatever you want to do.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Because why don't you want to do whatever you want to do?
It's not the right
No,
thing
no,
to do. I have
no,
a conscience, Your Honor. You're
You
not.
know why?
I'm relying on the U.S. Supreme Court rulings, so I can't be charged with willfully just driving around. Like, I'm really relying on law.
Right.
I'm not just out here willy-nilly
Right.
doing what I want to do. That's
Right.
not the case.
So what about, let's move on to another ticket. What about your insurance? If it's so important to you that you can drive with your car and everything, why is your car not insured?
Something happened. That's freak nature. That's me and the other citizens will.
So, Mr. Williams, if I just decide I don't want to have it, and then somebody gets critically injured and they sue for their people's injuries, because that's what ends up happening. It's never enough resources.
That's not the point here.
Okay,
That's not.
so why don't you have the, well, not the insurance? Okay, another alcohol.
One of them.
Three. Let's say the same day, let me check.
Yeah, that's something not right.
At this point, the legal issue has already been decided. The court has ruled on jurisdiction and offered a path forward through trial. But sovereign citizen arguments often become stronger after a setback because changing position would mean admitting the original premise might be wrong. The danger is that every new argument feels like a defense of freedom while moving further away from the actual legal issues that determine the outcome.